Alright, so fresh off the announcement of her Golden Globe nomination for Mary Poppins Returns, we're going to continue with this segment with the Jane Austen Book Club, which kind of falls in the same tradition as Salmon Fishing in the Yemen in regards to you hear that title and it's not exactly something that immediately jumps out at you as, well, this will be exciting. But much like Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, you really just kind of have to watch it to really get what's going on with it, and definitely not judge it by that alone. And sort of immediately, we start off with this whole idea of, obviously these women are going to have like these lives that just seem to be falling apart or aren't going anywhere, so they're going to need something to sort of spice up their lives a little bit. And we are shown this through this montage during the opening credits of just like these inconveniences in their life, sometimes mild, sometimes, maybe someone's dog is dead. But the interesting thing that the movie does when you watch it back is it's sort of like this montage actually hints at the direction that it's going. Because immediately just, based on the title and the setup and everything, you immediately just think this is about these women that need to, bring more life into their lives, but, and the other people around them are just kind of there, just like side characters that are pushing this or causing the conflict or whatever. But you'll notice during this montage that it's the guys too are also having these sort of inconveniences and not just the women, and it just sort of, I sort of like how that, even in the opening credits, it sort of foreshadows that that this Jane Austen book club can bring more to the lives of, more than just to their lives, but maybe those side characters in their life also. And it's a pretty smooth setup, because you've got, obviously, the 6 Jane Austen books, you've got 6 characters that all have these different things going on in their lives. We even double down on that with the Kathy Baker character having gone through 6 marriages already. And of course it's her that sort of starts this club off by saying that it's going to be a perfect antidote for life in general. And of course, like I said, you may get sort of an idea in your head about what this movie is and where it's going just based on the concept alone. Particularly when you see, like, women in an actual coffee shop discussing Jane Austen. I think one of the characters even kind of sort of calls out the idea of it seems such a cliche that they're in a coffee shop doing this. And so you might get the idea that it's just this sort of, like, same old run-of-the-mill, like, romantic comedy of sorts. And of course it wouldn't be a romantic comedy without a mild case of stalking, so of course we have the Hugh Dancy character come in and sort of follow Maria Bella to this bar despite the fact that he's already been rebuked by her once. In this interesting scenario of throwing one guy into the mix, because there is, what they really could have done, there are so many traps that this movie could have fallen into that it doesn't, particularly with the Hugh Dancy character. And like I was talking about the whole setup itself, where all the characters in this movie could have been like a stereotype, and it's so easy to imagine in a worse movie all these characters just being unbearable and predictable and all that, but sort of immediately, not only do we get to know them through their own personal conflicts and all that, but also the fact that there's sort of something is off about the balance with Hugh Dancy coming into this, because, well, number one, he's got a couple of different people have different ideas for him and how he fits into this club in regards to whether he's going after Maria Bella, who he really wants, who's trying to basically force him on Amy Roman, who's just been dumped by Jimmy Smits. So what they could have done here in regards to how he interacts with the group and how he sort of, makes it maybe a little off balance. Number one, they make his character actually very charming, because like I said, in another movie, the whole him following Maria Bella after she's already basically turned him down would probably be a bit off-putting, but it's very, very quickly the character sort of falls in line with what's going on here. But also the inclusion of his sort of love for sci-fi. And it's also when you look at their characters and you think, well, they could have been very easy, women reading in a coffee shop stereotypes. He also could have been a stereotype, also he only loves sci-fi sort of thing. But the thing that this movie does is make the characters feel so real that all these things feel less like they'd be stereotypical characters and more just that's who they are. And there's really nothing that feels too much like it's making them a certain type. It just feels like that's part of their personality, which is something that a lot of movies like this sort of fail their characters in doing and pulling off. So once you have the characters established, you can pretty much go about just about any way, and as long as you hold that together and make the characters like that easy to like and that relatable or realistic or whatever, you'd be surprised what you can get away with. There's some things in this movie where looking back on it, even after the ending is all happy and everything, it's sort of like, yeah, but should that character really have gone in that direction, or should she really be with that dude or not? But it all somehow manages to feel like it comes together in this really nice way. And even if you question some things in the back of your head, the movie's convincing enough that it doesn't do anything to sort of taint the happy ending that we end up at. And so, talking about these characters and how well they're put together, clearly my personal favorite character in the movie would have to be Prudy, obviously. But the thing here is that, and it's nothing, like, there is nothing against all the other actors there. This cast is, like, amazing, just looking at it. But there's something about Blunt's performance and the character of Prudy herself that is much more sort of, it feels like the center of attention, whether that's I mean, it's obviously an ensemble piece, but Prudy's just easily the character that at least I gravitate towards the most. Because when they start off, she's obviously, even down to her name, there's just something that seems sort of inherently snooty about her, and the way that she's like this sort of awesome perfectionist, and where like she's the one where it's like if you get even just the slightest detail wrong, it's gonna drive her insane. She's like the ultimate fangirl, but the thing here is that they don't take that far enough to where she's unlikable. If anything, she's the most sympathetic character in the entire thing, which is also really interesting because when you look at some of the conflicts here, hers seems to sort of be like one of the least dire. I mean, there's obviously, with Lynn Redgrave playing her mom, there's a whole thing there eventually, but at the start, she sort of seems like in one of the better case scenarios, because we've got, you know, Maria Bella's dog has just died, and Amy Brenham's just been dumped by her husband and all that. And the thing here is just, she's been denied a trip to Paris, and she's always wanted to go there, but he basically, her husband decides that he's going to go there for a different reason, some cryptic whatever, but, and that's really about it. But you do get a sense that this is just sort of one thing in a long line of things in this marriage, and it's very easy to quickly feel for her, even if it just seems like one thing. And once again, they very easily could have made her that character also. So there's more like, despite the fact that her situation may not be as dire at the start, there's just sort of this sadness that you can sense in her that's just really sort of powerful every time we see this character, regardless of the context. And I guess regardless of the stories of the other people around her, there's just something about her that like really stands out amongst this ensemble. And of course, it's absolutely the smart play to give, of all the cast members, Blunt the most complex part. Like I said, that's not to take anything away from the rest of the cast at all, but her and this character just feel like they just really click together in a way that I don't know could have worked with anybody else. With anybody else, it probably would have ended up feeling a bit more like that type, but still, she's able to just get right into the heart of these characters and make them so incredibly just heart-wrenching and sad. The scene towards the end when she's like desperately trying to get her husband to read the book to fix their marriage, it's like she just rips your heart out of your chest and like wrings it out. it's always like one of the hardest scenes to watch too, but that's only because she's just so brilliant in that scene. But she's also got this sort of side thing going on because Kevin Zegers is introduced to as one of her students because she's a French teacher, and I can't tell if she looks way too young to be a teacher, or he looks way too old to be a student, but I think they're only like 1 year apart in like real life, so I'm not sure what exactly is going on here, but he's obviously this sort of, he's very much got his, I'm almost convinced that Kevin Zegers just sort of eventually morphed into Zac Efron, and that's why you hear much more from one than the other. It's like, have we seen them in the same place at the same time before? I don't know. But the thing here, though, is that he's they actually sort of, in the true fashion this movie does in many ways, sort of gives you the idea of something just by looking at it from a distance. And then sort of once you get the whole picture, you realize how quick you may have been to judge something. So when we see him and we see the way that Prudy reacts to him, we get this vibe that he's like sort of this like desirable bad boy type, and sort of the like the one thing that's gonna like spice up her life, where her marriage feels dull, he feels like almost like a dangerous route to go, especially when she sees him with that other girl that's this always seems to kind of sort of bring something out in her. Like when she sees him kissing that girl, and it's just like her feet under the desk are just like going crazy because she just wants that. And it's sort of like he just sort of has this way of popping up pretty much anywhere that she is, and it's almost like a devil on her shoulder or something. But the way they do that, and the way she sort of shows off that she's basically this ticking time bomb of passion, more or less. But then when that goes in the direction of we see that he's like more of an artistic type, and he's doing the whole play thing, and it's the way that she starts to react off of that, where it's like, she's so unhappy for most of this movie, which is so sad, but there's that one moment when she goes to the play and she sees him, and she like hands that note off to him, and it's just when we see her smile, it feels like we haven't seen her smile in like forever, and it just, that moment alone really comes off in this big way, because we do see the way she interacts with her husband, and it's not like it's a terrible life or anything, but he's very, you can tell that she really needs a lot more love in her life than what this marriage is giving her. And maybe the same for him, but like we get these moments when he's getting ready to leave, and they go to kiss, but it's like their lips don't even really touch, and it's like just in that moment alone just sort of says everything about where this marriage has come. But I do like that they go in sort of that unexpected direction, where it seems like it's completely and totally predictably setting up that she's going to go in one direction. And even if, you know, the Ziegler's direction may have been a bit reckless on her part, still, it really, really feels like that this marriage is done and is dead. And when we get to that surprising moment at the end when she actually chooses to go back to her husband and beg him to try to get them to fix it, it's crazy how much it works. When it just, like I said, really feels like it sets up one thing, and like, usually that's what you want it to do, is to set up one thing and then go in that direction, but the way this pulls it off really feels sort of unique to it when you look at, you know, the other movies in this genre like this. So that's basically, in you know, just those moments also where it's where you get the sense of where the marriage is at. When the first time she takes him to meet all of them, and she's like, you know, she pulls the book out and she's got that smile on her face, and in the same shot her husband comes into the frame beside her, and her face just drops into an entirely different, more dire expression, and just stuff like that really, like I said, is what really draws me to this character. She gets another crying scene, and like I've said before, there's nobody cries quite like Blunt. You can just feel just how painful it is, and it's really great. This is probably one of my favorite characters that she's ever played, for all those reasons. But like I said, to not take away from the fact that this is an ensemble, for sure, Amy Brenneman especially, I think, should have, I mean, I know she's had a very long, very healthy career in TV, but there are some times when I watch her, like in movies like this, where it's like, I still feel like her career could be even bigger than it is. And she could have like bigger, maybe because I think more along the lines of movies as opposed to TV, where her career has really thrived. But yeah, I feel like she should definitely be one of those more big, recognizable names. She definitely has the potential for that. Well, like I said, you've got, you know, Kathy Baker, you've got Maggie Grace. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody. But they all do come through and make this really... Maria Bello was the one I was missing, of course. The one that kind of set all this off with her dog dying. So, who's also... I usually say I'm not quite sure how to take Maria Bello, because sometimes she can be a bit over the top, but other times work really well with subtlety. This is a really good part for her, where she doesn't necessarily have to do the over-the-top thing, where I sort of question her abilities as an actress sometimes, but here she really shines in a part like this. Even if it may not be as, you know, showy or as dramatic as some of the other parts. But the one thing also that really stands out about this movie to me is the fact that, as I said before about how I feel about the sort of period era stuff, that includes, books as well. So it's like the fact that you don't need to know the material, like Jane Austen material, inside out for this movie to work for you and for these characters to work. Because not only does it just sort of seem like if you're not an Austen fan, these characters make those novels seem a lot more interesting and sort of make you want to visit or revisit them. And the way that it's like, yeah, maybe it would be, it would definitely entice you the most to know the material inside out because of those ways that their stories tend to sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly mirror what's happening in the stories, especially the story that they're assigned to. But still, even though just the way that passion that they speak about it, especially for Rudy, just really, like I said, even if the material is not your thing, and that's sort of like the movie itself is sort of like how I say you look at a movie called the Jane Austen Book Club and you think, well, surely that couldn't be interesting, and surely that's only for women or whatever. And it's like the movie shows you that that's pretty much exactly what happens with the books themselves. Also, when they start to get the guys in their life involved in it, also. And like I said, that could be maybe a bit cheesy when you see like Prudy's husband, reading the books, and Jimmy Smith's like being really into it also. Like I said, these are characters that you just kind of want to get to this point so badly that it's really hard to look at it in a cynical way when it reaches those more happy places. Like I said, even with the Jimmy Smith's character, you kind of think, can she really trust him after all that? Like, should she really go back to him so quickly? But like I said, the way the movie pulls off its happy ending so well, because usually you would think, with all these conflicts, at least one of these relationships wouldn't work somehow. And it might seem like a bit too easy that they all do. But like I said, it also seems like it almost intentionally goes in that direction because we've seen so much, we sort of expect at this point that maybe one of them won't work. It's sort of the unexpected route that everybody's happy, interestingly enough. So, and like I said, the way they, play up those close connections, not just through their connection through the book club and all that, and their love for Austen, but also like I said, how the Hugh Dancy character connects to multiple characters at once, and also scenes like I said, the opening montage or the scene the second time Maggie Rice gets hospitalized and the ambulance goes by all of the characters without those characters knowing that she's in there, and it's how on its path to the hospital it goes by like all the characters, and there's sort of that. It's too, I would say Magnolia-like, but yeah, not only is that Magnolia-like, but they literally put Amy Mann's Save Me in it. So it's like, maybe they went a little too much for that Magnolia territory, but it still works in its own way, for sure. So, and honestly, one thing that really comes through with it also is the fact that it's a movie about a love for books, which might seem a bit contradictory, but the thing here is that it really seems to sort of be this celebration of finding companionship with really any medium, like any sort of art and or entertainment. Because like the way they connect with Austen and the way it's like, even in the most down times, it's like sometimes it might be the one thing that they have and the one sort of friend that's like always there, even if it's, just a story. And it's like some people may feel that way about, movies also. And it's sort of showing that meshing also by just the fact that we're watching a movie about this sort of just blends that in together, and also makes you sort of accept the idea of it's this sort of love of that companionship for any medium. So I really like the way it's able to pull that off also. So and sometimes the pain that can bring also, like when Prudy breaks down and gets drunk and is talking about how what happens when the stories are over, and maybe they're, not so happy afterwards. And it's like sometimes also the thing that you love can bring that pain like that, especially when you sort of overanalyze it. But for the most part, I see it as more of a celebration of loving whatever art form it is that you gravitate towards. So yeah, it's a movie that I always like. This isn't even a movie that had to grow on me. Like the first time I saw it in like 2008, which probably about a year after it came out, I was like kind of shocked how much I actually really liked it and really felt for all these characters in such a big way. But like I said, really stands out also is probably one of my favorite Blonde characters, and one of her, you know, I would say one of her best performances, but I mean, with all the stuff we've already talked about, that would just be an impossible list to make at this point, and we're not even done yet. So we've still got, including Mary Poppins Returns, I think 5 more of these to go. So, yeah, so the next one is going to be Irresistible, and then we're going to go into a couple of TV movies that she did. So, and then there'll be a few more after that, including a few TV shows of hers that I was able to find. So, so yeah, so until the next one, I think that's it for